Thank you, Sudakshina, for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to converse with you today.
Thank you so much for having me over. It's really nice, and I really like this setup that you've created, and I'm sure you all are doing a great job of creating content like this.
Thank you so much for that. Pleasure. Okay, now before we talk of the more serious stuff, we'd like to understand you as a person, right? So can we get to know you a little bit when you were a child, when you were growing up? How were you as an individual?
So I grew up in a city called Jabalpur, which is in Madhya Pradesh.
Right.
I spent my large part of my teens there. How was as a child? Okay, so actually when I was looking at this question, I did ask my mother, so what do you remember about me as a child, which I can talk about.
Right.
I don't want to talk about stuff that I shouldn't be talking about. So she said, once I looked at the moon and I said that it looks like the moon is swimming in hot water and there's steam around it. So she thought probably I'll grow up and be somebody who can express in some form, maybe an artist or something. Maybe that's what they had thought, my parents thought that I would be. But I grew up to be an HR professional, which I'm extremely happy and proud about, but it's happened to me by an accident. Yeah, so as a child I have very pleasant memories, like we moved around a few cities, so that made me adaptable. We lived in colonies, so that meant like I grew up with a bunch of children, with open spaces, doing races on bikes, like bicycles. Like I can also repair a bicycle.
Wow.
I know how to fix the chain of the bicycle. So taking the bicycle to for the tires to be pumped every now and then was a discipline.
Right.
Walking to school was a discipline, which are quite different from a big city life.
Absolutely.
And yeah, like I took usual stuff, like took part in different programs in
So
school.
were you troublesome when you were a small kid? Did you trouble your parents a lot?
No, they've actually never said that I have troubled them.
Okay.
Like I mean, I've never had a parents' call or something in the school. So if that's any yardstick, I mean, I had it only once when I was standard 11, but that's grown up. That's not being a child. Only time when my father was called to the school was when I had an accident. I fell on from the seesaw and I broke my chin. That was the only time that my father got a call from school. Otherwise, no. So I guess not.
So tell us a little more about your parents and family. You did mention that you moved around a lot.
So my father retired from central government, and he worked with the ordnance. That meant that, as I said, we lived a lot of colony life. And then eventually we moved to Calcutta, which was very difficult initially to adjust, starting from language to culture to, and I was at an impressionable age at that point of time. So it took me a few years to really figure, because I always thought it was temporary. We were going to move out of Calcutta. Yeah, it was just quite, I mean, like I'm a Bengali, so when we moved to Calcutta, and then I find it difficult to adjust there. So it's quite a dichotomous situation. But eventually I started liking the city and I made friends, and yeah.
So that was your longest stint in Kolkata?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I've not gone back to Calcutta once I left.
Okay. Interesting. So what were your interests as a student, when you were growing up with other kids and everything? What were your personal interests back then?
I actually liked to read stuff, and I mean, now there's so much to read, but then back then they were largely books. And I must give credit to my father that he insisted that we studied newspaper. Like we read newspaper, not studied, read newspapers, on a regular, like every day. Because he said the way to learn language is to read the newspaper. And he would actually make us read, me and my brother, that whether we've done our work or not. So he would ask us to read something once he would get back from work in the evening. And also I must credit that my parents taught us to learn Bengali. As I said, during my first few years we were outside Calcutta. But during summer vacations, they made sure that we studied the Bengali curriculum, so which today I find very useful, because I've not lost touch with, my Bengali roots.
Coming to the college part. So how were you as a person in your college years?
I guess I had started to appreciate fun by then.
Okay.
You know, like steal a movie here and there and just to like get out a bit, and I had made some friends by then, and it was good to just hang out with them, and yeah, it was like, I realized that there was a lighter side of life as well.
So things would have changed for you from school then to college?
Yeah, things actually changed when I after my first board exam, which is class 10th. Till class 10th, I used to struggle whether, you know, whether I'll make it, what will happen to me, and this whole stress of sitting for the first board exam. There's just so much that happens around it.
Too overwhelming.
Absolutely. Like now, when I look back, I think it's unfair to do that to children. But so when my 10th results, so I was like, I had a phobia for maths, and then I finally managed to get a distinction in mathematics in class 10th board exam. So I mean, I was completely startled that how did that happen. So that gave me a lot of confidence, you know, like okay, perhaps I could go and face the world. So for 11th onwards, I think that was an inflection point to really the personality to change in a lot of ways.
True. Just taking you a little back again, while growing up, did you want to be anybody? Did you have an ambition like most kids? You know, we wanted to be a doctor or an engineer, as imposed though, but we had some aspiration that we wanted to become.
I'm not going to talk about what I wanted to really become, because it's going to be a big joke. But yeah, I mean, I've had many aspirations. I wanted to become an air hostess, from a fashion designer to a hairstylist. So I've gone through those. But I don't think I ever aspired to become a doctor or an engineer. But yeah, at some point I very seriously considered if I should go to a creative school or something, like, you know, something of that sort.
So you always had that creative bent of mind throughout?
Actually, I mean, now when I look back, I think maybe I did, but I don't think it was so strong that I could pursue. So I let it, I think I've allowed a lot of meandering. So, you know, like life just found its own path. Yeah.
So from meandering to coming to the HR profession, how did HR actually happen to you?
So I started working pretty early, when I was 17 and a half actually. So if I had to really say what I wanted to become, I think I wanted to become financially independent. I think that's something that can stand out. Everything else was just like, okay, I woke up with a thought and I lived with it for some time and then I moved on to something else. But this is something that always stayed with me. So, so coming back to how HR happened. You know, back then there used to be a newspaper called The Statesman in India, in Calcutta. And that used to carry a supplement called Quest. And in that, so that was actually an HR supplement for the newspaper. And I used to really enjoy reading what used to come out over there. It used to talk about company culture, employee behavior, question and answers from professionals, you know, wanting help in their career. I don't know what it is. It's difficult to, you know, put my thumb on it, but that I used to look forward. It used to come every Wednesday, and I used to look forward to that supplement. And I used to look forward to reading that supplement. And then when it came to choose between marketing and HR during my MBA, I chose marketing. But my professor, he told me that it's going to be very difficult to pursue a career in sales and marketing later. So I think as a girl, I think you should choose HR. And then I remembered about you know, what I read about HR in the magazine and in that newspaper supplement, and I said, okay, fine, let me just give it a.
So that's how you came into the profession.
Yeah, actually, I was not in HR. I was hired as a. So they were hired. So I started with a telecom company, which is now known as Vodafone, and they were hiring a bunch of young people to do various kind of odd jobs. So like I was one of them. And then after working with them, I pretty much moved around different departments. I did a stint in sales, I did a stint in customer service and all of that. And then there was an opening in HR and I said, you know what, I think I should give it a shot. So one fine day I just took an appointment with the executive director of that company and I walked up to him and I said, listen, I've been here and you know who I am and I would like to move to HR. And he was I said, you can, I can sit for interview or whatever, but I would want to. I think he was a bit startled.
Okay. So you mentioned a while ago that you did marketing.
Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, I wanted to do marketing, but I was dissuaded from doing marketing. But I thought there were really cool stuff that people in marketing do, like they talk about brands and they talk about products and they do such.
And a lot of travel to places. I think that was very fascinating at that time. Yeah.
And I always, and whatever little I saw, and we were this new age company then, and whatever I saw, people in marketing, they had something like some additional stuff about them, which I used to find very fascinating. Yeah.
Interesting. Sure. So from an HR executive at Vodafone to being the CHRO at IL&FS, how has the journey been for you so far?
Serendipitous. I just found myself in places where there were opportunities, and I guess there's a streak of diligence which one just acquires, or I don't know whether people are born with it, but you just realize that that streak of diligence is so important, because that's what makes one convert opportunities into experience. True. My reality, what people talk about, portfolio, body of work. I think it's all about how one converts opportunities into portfolio, body of work. So once the opportunities presented itself, all I could do was diligently pursue what requires to be pursued, and I mean that's what I've done.
Right. So I think diligence has really got you so far, in a way.
Sure, yeah. Like if I were to say one thing, yeah, of course. I mean, if there's one thing which is consistent, it is diligence.
Very nicely put. Now, talk to us about some of the obstacles or some of the challenges that you had, in your career graph. What were those challenges, and how did you tackle them?
I think working with different sets of people is worth mentioning. I mean, it's one thing to just interact with people. It's completely another thing to interact with them in a manner to make an impression, get them to do something, get them to agree to something, bring about something to life. I think it's a completely different ball game. So if one thing that I would say, I won't call it an obstacle, but if there's one thing that I would say is a real challenge, is about getting people to believe in what you believe in.
I think that's the most difficult part to do.
And then to get them to do what you require them to do as a representative of the organization, because people work for people.
True.
So I would say that's, if I would say anything that is very challenging, I think that's what is challenging. And such sets of people keep changing, the numbers keep changing, from 5 it becomes 50, then 500 and then 5,000. But typically you're doing similar things, right? You're either influencing 5 people or 50 people or 500 or 5,000.
True. So the belief system is actually a big...
Like how and why should they believe you? There has to be something very compelling. So unless I have conviction in what I am telling them, how can I expect them to believe in that? And you don't nurture a bunch of donkeys who's just going to follow you just because you're saying it. Like there has to be a degree of irreverence in people, right?
Now, did you have mentors early on in your career? Have they somehow impacted in the person that you are today?
I've been fortunate that I've had good people to work with, from whom I have learnt. And I have had people other than professionals who have inspired me, who have influenced me. But to say that I have a mentor, actually I could do with one. I've not really had a mentor.
Okay. I think you could be a mentor to a lot of people out there.
I don't know about that, but I could do with a mentor. Maybe I should go find one.